Hello and welcome to the Candlelight Podcast, where I, Mohamed Abdalla, talk about different topics, including some of my favorites, which are movies, martial arts, and philosophy. Guys, how does this sound? I just bought a new audio interface, and oh, by the way, the whole setup before I bought this audio interface was basically just a plug-in USB microphone. Now I have like somewhat of a decent setup. How does this sound? Probably better, right? I really hope my investment doesn't go to waste, and I really hope you guys enjoy this mini. Well, it's not really mini. This upgrade to a better quality of sound. I really hope this is really gonna benefit me and really make this podcast of a higher quality to you guys. Anyway, let's get into this week's quote. And guys, bear with me on this one, okay? As long as you have a dream and believe in yourself, I think success is just a matter of time. Now, when I said bear with me, I mean basically that this quote is very basic. It's a very average, everybody has said it at one point in time quote. Why did I pick it for this week's podcast? Why don't I just pick another interesting quote that's really kind of out of the mainstream, like many of the recent quotes I kind of chosen, very unique. Well, the reason is Joe Rogan on his podcast had a very special guest, and that guest said this line, said this quote, this phrase, while describing his own life story. And the reason I chose to quote this on my podcast is because of how great that story was, how actually inspiring it was. It was one of the craziest life stories I've ever heard. And let me just get into it. So again, the quote is, as long as you have a dream and believe in yourself, I think success is just a matter of time. The person who said this quote is Francis Ngannou. Some of you may know him as an MMA fighter who fights in the UFC. And yeah, that's who he is. And I really didn't know that there was much behind him other than he was just this brutalizing power puncher who's a heavyweight and just knocks everyone out. Man, he's just spectacular to watch. Just knocks people out flat. It's scary how much power one man can have. And this man's got power. Anyway, the reason I chose this quote is not because of his amazing skill and prowess in the cage. It's because of his life story. So Francis was born and raised in Cameroon, the African country of Cameroon, and he was raised in poverty. He worked all throughout his childhood. He didn't have as he says, I didn't have a proper childhood. I felt like there was something left out. I didn't have the kind of like the freedom of the other kids. I had to work all day, even after school. I still had to work in the sand mines as a kid, as a 10-year-old kid. All the way to when he was 17 until he graduated, basically. He worked in the sand mines in Cameroon trying to earn a decent buck, trying to make some money because he was living in poverty. Like, people around him were doing better than him. Families around his were doing better. And his family was just downright in, basically, because, well, the main reason for this was because his father divorced his mother at a young age, and he was abusive. He was not the best dad, not the type of guy to stick around, and basically they had to fend out for themselves. Already, right there, poor guy. You know what? That itself, not having two parents that you can look up to until you reach adulthood, that blessing was not present for him. That alone earns my empathy, but that's nothing compared to what's coming right now. So he worked in the sand mines as a kid, and as he grew older, he saw that everybody around him was stagnant. Everybody that lived around him was stagnant. They didn't have any hopes or dreams of doing something big with their lives, doing something that will take them out of their present situation. He saw everyone's just doing their very, very simple jobs, such as being a taxi driver, being a cleaner, being a mine worker, whatever it was. He wanted something more out of life. He dreamed big. He wanted to be a boxer, actually. So he actually wanted to be like the heavyweight champion of the world. He kind of had that idea that he could actually fight and become world famous and just become this huge champion. Well, that dream was going to come at a cost. And as the longer I heard him explain his journey, the crazier it just got, the more amazed and horrified I was, and kind of intrigued how a man can go through so much yet keep on pushing and keep on moving forward. So check this out. Excuse me. So he was in Cameroon. He had to make it all the way. This is his goal. Make it all the way to France, illegally, obviously, because he didn't have the money to go there legally and get the visa. He had to go all the way to France and then establish himself as a fighter. So what he did was basically one day kind of straight up kind of leave his family while he was young, and he got some money with him, and he kind of basically moved from Cameroon to Nigeria, and from Nigeria to Mali, and from Mali to Morocco, Al Maghreb, just basically going through all these countries, trying to basically find the way to get to Europe, because he went to Al Maghreb, to Morocco, because he can get from Madiq Jabal Tariq, Gibraltar, he can actually make it to Spain, and from Spain to France. But man, that journey is more complicated than it sounds. Just from getting to Cameroon, Nigeria, he could do that because they are kind of allied countries. They don't need any visas in order for people to move through them. It's just your ID and you're good. Your passport, I guess. But the thing is, some people were corrupt, such as police, and in order to get from somewhere to anywhere, you had to go through borders. And going through borders, the police kind of frisk you. When they frisk you, they don't look for weapons. No, they're looking for money. They're looking to get anything they can out of you. Money, jewelry, you name it. Whatever has a price to it, they want to get it. They want to take it. And that's how he kind of had to hide his money. And guess what? Guess how he hid his own money? Because you can't hide it under your shoes or in your sock or in your back pocket. No, they're going to frisk the entire thing. They're going to rip off every shred of clothing just trying to find some amount of dough. So what he did was, and guys, it's kind of squeamish, but keep in mind, he put the money in plastic bags and swallowed it, so that when he can pass through the border, he can then throw it up and get the money back. But the money won't be wet or dissolved or anything because it was in a plastic bag. Creative, but horrible, but necessary. So, from Nigeria, he went to Mali, and through Mali, from Nigeria to Mali was a crazy adventure. Oh, if you could say it, it's more like how do you explain like a negative, what's a synonym for adventure but has a negative connotation? I have no idea. My mind went blank. Anyway, so the way to get from Nigeria to Mali was to go through the Sahara Desert, which is the biggest desert in Africa, and Africa ain't small. So he had to basically go get a car, and not a car that he drives by himself throughout the desert. No, get a car with many other immigrants trying to do the same thing he's doing, but trying to get to the north of Africa and perhaps even into Europe. So basically, they'd get this small truck that would fit no more than 10 people, but there would be 20 people on it, and they have to drive through the desert with it, and you can't basically if the car breaks down in the desert, you're done for. You have to wander around the desert trying to get back, trying to get anywhere, but you're in the middle of an entire desert that's a size of a huge country. So check this out. The ride itself was about a day's ride. Yeah, well, you think that's easy? Well, a day's ride. How hard can that be? Well, guess what? They couldn't pack any food. They couldn't pack any water. They couldn't pack anything other than small luggage, because there was just so many people in the truck, and there were so many people in the truck hanging off the truck to the point that there's just no room at all for anything other than important luggage. So they drink their fill of water before attempting this journey throughout the desert. So going through Mali, they're going through the Sahara Desert. They're basically dangling off this truck, holding on. And by the way, they're holding on like clenched fists. They're trying not to fall off. And if someone does fall off while the truck is going, they're not going to stop for you. They're going to keep going. If you can run after the truck and make it, good for you. If you can't, hey, tough luck. This is a true story, guys. Up until now, this is all true. This happens to people daily in that area. So what happened then was Francis just was holding tightly onto like a truck's railing, I guess you could call it, just something, to the point that he said his entire body just cramped because you have to hold on and not fall off. He was sitting at the edge of his seat, basically facing the outward of the truck, very close to falling if he left some slack in his grip. And he even explained how just devastated everybody was that was on the car ride. He would say that there was a mother who had a child who actually almost wanted to, basically she was carrying a baby and she had to hold on as well. And she got so tired that she actually wanted to throw the baby, quote unquote, overboard. But thankfully, the people on the truck were nice enough to actually help in carrying the baby and carrying that kind of burden. And yeah, that's actually good to hear that that baby wasn't chucked. And yeah, so they had to go through this like rigorous, horrible car ride. And once they make it throughout the desert, they have to actually get into Morocco. Now, Morocco isn't exactly the same as like other African countries such as Nigeria and Cameroon. Morocco is an Arab country. It's at the northernmost part of Africa. It's different. You have to actually try and get in there and actually try to get to the beach and get a boat and sail across the water through Gibraltar. And that's what they had to do. And Francis said he attempted this about 6 times, trying to get from the beach to the port in Spain, but about 5 different times he was caught and he had to be forced all the way back. Not back to the beach, back to the Saharan desert, where he had to come back to Morocco, come back to the beach, find another boat, and actually try again this however long journey where they had to paddle with their hands most of the time in order to reach what they thought was freedom, what they thought was the potential future of their lives. So Francis was very dead set, no matter what happened, because man, a lot happened. He said so many times it was very, very, just very easy to quit, but he just didn't. He didn't. He was too stubborn. He just wanted to achieve his own dream, and he wanted to, be what he wanted to be, pave his own path, and that's what he's gonna do. So he eventually made it to the port of Spain. Oh, by the way, guys, I'm explaining the story terribly. Go on and listen to Francis' story on Joe Rogan's podcast. It is bananas. Seriously. Great story. One of the greatest podcasts I've ever listened to. And it just came out, by the way. Came out like a few days ago. So, he makes it to Spain. He then illegally gets into France. It's all illegal, by the way, but which is, I'm not passing any judgment whether it's like immigration. Is it legal? Is it not? Is it a... No. This is saying that kind of story where you have to think about legal or not. He made it to France, and now he wanted to join a boxing gym. So he got into contact with the Fusions, but then he kind of ended up in an MMA gym where he tried MMA, and he was just successful, knocking people out left and right. Even submitted a guy in his first fight, and then he just kind of fought until he made it to the UFC. And now we have Francis Ngannou fighting for the title soon in March for the second time. He fought the first time for the title against Stipe Miocic, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. He lost, understandably, because Stipe is just that good. Even though Francis was nuking people left and right, just obliterating them, pulverizing them with punches, knocks them into orbit. But Stipe was such a good fighter, such a skilled and thoughtful fighter that he was able to outwork Francis and win. So Francis is coming for redemption in this rematch. And honestly, guys, let me tell you something. When I first heard of Francis Ngannou, when I first kind of was aware of him and saw his interviews, how he kind of how can I say this? What's the word? I'm kind of blanking now. Oh well, I blank every podcast. So anyway, how he carried himself. It was kind of he seemed a bit arrogant. But I mean, if you have that kind of power, why wouldn't you be? I'm just kidding. But seriously, he kind of came across arrogant, and Stipe came across very humble, very modest. And so I was rooting for Stipe. I really like to see Stipe win and really pave a legacy for himself as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, heavyweight of all time. But now, after hearing Ngannou's story and seeing what this means for a guy like him, and by the way, he goes back to Cameroon every once in a while to show them that, yes, we can do this. Yes, we can be successful. He opened his own Francis Ngannou Foundation where he's teaching kids MMA in Cameroon, where they can fulfill their dreams of becoming more than what they are right now. That's amazing. So after hearing Francis Ngannou's story, I can't not root for this guy. I want this guy to become the heavyweight champ. I want him to beat Stipe Miocic. Even though I like Stipe, I really hope it's not too brutal. But I really hope, Francis gets it done. Man, what a story. Oh, anyway, speaking of MMA, my thoughts on who the greatest MMA fighter of all time was cut short last time due to the 30-minute limit of my episodes. Excuse me. I started getting into it at the end, so I just wanted to, continue talking about the same subject right now, about who the greatest of all time is. So I said that I rank George St. Pierre and Khabib Nurmagomedov at the top of the heap. They're both the greatest of all time. I know you have to have one, but these two just achieved so much at such a great level that you got to give it to both of them. I can't choose between one of them, honestly. So again, why is it not John Jones? Well, failed too many drug tests and lost arguably a few fights. Definitely lost his last fight. I have no idea how they gave that fight to him. And why not Anderson Silva? Well, because as great as he was in his prime, he kind of ruined his legacy by fighting too much, way past his prime, after he broke his leg in half. And he wasn't as dominant, by the way. Even though he had amazing, spectacular knockouts, he wasn't as dominant as Khabib and George. Khabib and George dominated almost all of their fights. Anderson struggled a lot, but he was such a great fighter and mostly dominant. Mostly. So why not? Oh, Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse. Why isn't he the one of the contenders for the greatest of all time? He is definitely the greatest flyweight of all time. He is such an amazing fighter, such a complete fighter. He can do it all. He's just a wizard. That guy. Wow, what a great fighter. He's definitely the greatest of all time, no doubt, if not top 3. But man, what Khabib and George did was too special. And speaking of Khabib, he never bled, by the way. All of his 29 fights, he never once bled. He may have had a few bruises here and there, but to never bleed, no fighter has ever done that. Every fighter has his scars, but Khabib doesn't have any. And he is definitely the most dominant fighter ever. We have not seen dominance of this pedigree ever in the sport. Never have we seen something like this. Too dominant. Way too dominant. More than George was. And George lost 2 fights, by the way, but he avenged them. So that's why he's just so good. He avenged those 2 fights that he lost, and he went on and destroyed everyone else and became double champ, which Habib didn't do. But Habib did way too much, and he won every round of his career, not just every fight, every round. Arguably, he lost 1 or 2. He lost 2 officially, but arguably he definitely. That doesn't make sense. Arguably, he didn't lose those 2. Judges were off their rockers that night. I don't know. Anyway, so an important thing happened with regard to my beloved home country of the UAE. So let me guys introduce you to this: the Mars Hope Probe, the Mars mission, the Emirates Mars mission, المسبار الأمل الإماراتي. This is something we've been working on for years. This satellite that we sent into orbit of Mars was successful. It's a great achievement for us Emiratis. It was just such an amazing kind of accomplishment to have as a country. 200 of our very own Emirati engineers working hard on achieving an astronomical objective, pun very intended, and they sent the satellite 500 kilometers into space, and they made it reach Mars and get into its orbit. A satellite that basically, we're the fifth country to reach orbit in Mars. However, we are the first country to actually release a weather satellite into orbit, which can tell us a lot about the changing climate of Mars, how the atmosphere is becoming lesser and lesser, and how the weather basically is. To get into detail, you can really just go to the website of emiratsmarsmission.ae. It really can explain this much better than I can, because I've only heard tidbits, and I'm not the most I was about to say not interested in science, which that's not true. I am, but I'm not really the most up-to-date, well-read person in this field. So go on the website, emiratsmarsmission.ae. Check it out for yourself. It's awesome, honestly. So the big challenge for this mission was the 27 minutes where the probe was suspended and uncontrolled, and we just hope to God that it goes where it's supposed to go, where it theoretically is supposed to go, programmed to go, which is into orbit. So basically, they launched this thing from Earth, from Japan, an Emirati, a satellite from Japan, leaving Earth, going to Mars. And then at the very end was a 27 minutes of suspending the thrusters and kind of please correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Some of you listeners may find some mistakes in what I'm saying. I really hope I'm not making any mistakes. But hey, so this is what I know. They suspend the thrusters for 27 minutes in hopes that it can land into orbit naturally. And that's the kind of projected path. That's what they hope. That's what they programmed it to do. That's what they kind of ran the tests and saw that it would probably do. And the biggest fingers crossed moment was that 27 minutes where the probe is suspended and uncontrolled, and then we get feedback that it finally reached orbit. It actually did it. And we have this amazing scientific achievement now. A scientific achievement worldwide that's going to help a lot in understanding the red planet of Mars that is produced and shared by our very own. I'm so proud of us. It's a huge accomplishment, not just for the UAE, but for the Arab world at large, and the Islamic world at larger. So, man, this just goes. Wow, this is a continuation of the legacy of the great scientists and polymaths and great thinkers of the Islamic Golden Age, like Ibn al-Haytham, Ibn al-Arabi, and Khawarizmi. Their legacy is kind of alive today. That science, is a driving force, is an important thing that we need to kind of, explore and create and achieve. So it's awesome. It's really cool. Oh, speaking of astronomy, I was able to. There was this awesome uh, app called Star Tracker that kind of helps you, that you can download on your phone, and helps you recognize constellations in the sky. I downloaded it originally a few years back because I had a physics class, an introduction to astronomy physics class, which kind of taught us about the different stars and what they are and what they made out of, and what the life cycle of stars are. All the way to supernovas and all the whatnot. So we download the Star Tracker app, and you just kind of go outside, point your phone at the sky, and you can see the sky mapped out in the phone, and you can see all the constellations, all the stars, all the planets even. And if you go out in the desert, which I did, and use this Star Tracker app, man, it just looks beautiful. You can recognize the constellations, you can see the stars, and you can know their names. You can know, the different names like Orion's Belt, Betelgeuse, the North Star, and Rigel, and all these other stars that are just beautiful and bright and awesome to see. Oh, and Sirius, the brightest star there is, the one that you can see even at nighttime in the city. It's that bright. So yeah, I highly recommend downloading this app called Star Tracker. It's pretty cool. So, and speaking of apps, I got a new phone. Just to let you know, got the new iPhone 12 after finally ditching my iPhone 6s that I've had for over 5 years now. It's been working for 5 years. And so I got in 2015, late 2015 when it came out, the iPhone 6s. And then I got the iPhone X in 2017, but then the X died like twice on me. And after the second time, it was just dead. So I said, nah, forget you. And basically went back to the phone that I had, which is iPhone 6s. And I just stayed with that until recently it started kind of showing signs of age and dying. So I just decided, no, it's time. It's time to get a new phone. It's time to get a proper phone. It's time that I don't have the problems that I'm having with this old phone, even though it served me well over the years. You've been a good friend, iPhone 6s. I will not miss you. I'm sorry, I will miss you. I said I will not miss you. What a dumb slip. Anyway, I got a new phone. That's all there is to it. And yeah, man, what a crazy week this was. Cool week. Like, this was legit a cool week. Had awesome scientific achievements by my home country. Interesting MMA. Fights were awesome as well. Last Saturday, Frankie Edgar, the legend, the UFC legend Frankie Edgar got knocked out brutally. But man, that's what happens when you stay in the sport for too long, when you're too old for it. And same thing happened with Alistair Overeem. Overeem, one of the legends of MMA, he had Strikeforce title, he had a K1 title, he had titles. But then he came to the UFC and he tried to do title runs. He tried to get a title, but he just couldn't make it. He was just too old by that time, and the competition was too crazy. And by the way, Francis Ngannou, his most famous highlight knockout was of Alistair Overeem when he knocked his head into orbit. How awesome is this? MMA and orbit, astronomy, yeah, it's all circling back, coming together. Full circle. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, this was, guys, we're pushing the 30-minute mark. It's kind of close. So let's just kind of end it here. And so, yeah, this was the Candlelight Podcast by yours truly, Mohamed Abdalla. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I really hope you come back for more. Once again, what was the quote again? 1 second. As long as you have a dream and believe in yourself, I think success is just a matter of time. Francis Ngannou worked so hard, he made it. He finally made it. And man, are we all proud of him. See you in the next one, guys. Peace.